So without further ado, I want to introduce you to the feature. His name is Chef Dan Bears. You see, Chef Dan, he's a chief instructor at a Goose, he's a chef instructor, I'm sorry, at a Goose Escoffier School of Culinary Arts, who aids our online students. And what he does is he helps them navigate through their culinary education. You see, before working in his culinary world, he began his culinary career by achieving his associate's degree in culinary arts and has over 10 years experience, including breakfast, butchery, spanning a restaurant, hotel, cruise ship, industries. You see, when you put all of that together, Chef Dan got it going on. That's the best way to say all of it. Guys, without further ado, can you please give a virtual round of applause, a virtual stop your feet, a virtual shout for you are our very own Chef Dan Bears.
Hello all. Thank you so much for joining and making time on this lovely Saturday, wherever you're at. It was great to hear where everyone is from. So as Dwayne was talking, he was giving a great analogy about that volcano. So today we're going to satiate and soothe that volcano. We're going to talk about corned beef hash with St. Patrick's Day coming up. So a couple things here. We can take the leftover corned beef hash and turn it into a breakfast, which is what I'm going to show you how to do. The other option that you can do is corned beef hash goes on sale typically the day afterwards. You can get a cheap and fulfilling meal. So we're going to move over to the cutting board. And we're going to talk about a couple different techniques right here on the cutting board. So the first thing I want to do, the corned beef hash is going to have your corned beef, potatoes, onion are going to be your base options here. What I want to do is show you how to cut an onion in a way that you can get nice even pieces. So this is half of an onion. I've used the other half that we'll use in the demonstration here later today. So you can imagine this is the root of the onion and this is the other half that was cut off and the bottom. So one thing I want to show you, a couple things I want to show you is keep this part on. This is going to hold the onion together. So you want to keep that root on when you cut it in half. So you're going to take the bottom off. So you can see that level side here. So I can stand it up, cut it in half, and then I'll peel it. From there, how do we turn a round vegetable into nice even squares? What I'm going to show you is, so onions already have layers. I don't know if anyone's seen Shrek, but ogres are like onions. Onions are like onions as well. So multiple different layers. So they're already set down to the size that we're looking for. We just need to make sure they're nice and even. To do that, I'm going to take this onion, I'm going to lay it down so it's nice and flat. I want to work with a flat thing so it's not rolling around. And to get it into the squares, I'm going to lay my knife level and very carefully come to the top. Very important here, I'm not going to come all the way through. So this root's going to hold it together. If I were to come through and cut slices, it's going to fall apart. And then I'm going to go down the whole onion, moving about 1/8 of an inch down for every single option. Again, being very careful not to cut myself. Once I have cut in, okay, so I have my horizontal layers. Now I'm going to create my vertical layers. Same thing, not going to go all the way to the top. I'm going to stop just short of it. And every 1/8 inch, I'm going to come in and cut a little bit away. If the onion starts to fall apart, that's okay. The end result is going to be that we have some nice even cuts here. Okay, so now I have my horizontal slices, I have my vertical slices. Then I'm going to come back here using this claw grip, right? I'm tucking my fingertips back because I don't want to lose the end of my finger. I use that for whatever you need throughout the day. I don't want to lose that. So by tucking my fingertips back, resting the knife on my knuckle, that way I can have a nice stable grip. Okay, same thing. I'm going to come in and cut 1/8 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch. And as you look at the cutting board here, you can see that the majority of these pieces are close to the same size, and that's what we're looking for. We want everything to be as close to the same size as possible when we do knife cuts, so that it all cooks the same. I don't want one really long piece like we have here, and then a little piece here, because this little piece is going to burn before this long piece is cooked. Okay, so that's how I'm cutting the onion. With that, so I already have the onions in the pan, as you can see on the cutting board. All I'm looking for is translucent here. The corned beef hash, the corned beef is already cooked. The onions need to be slightly cooked. And let's talk about the next most important part, the potatoes. So potatoes have all been cut into 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch cubes. And then I boiled it in water for about 1 minute at this size. And then I instantly cooled it. So I par cooked it. What I'm doing here with the par cooking is I'm allowing it to be halfway cooked so that when we cook the rest of it in a pan, we're not going to overcook or undercook anything, if that makes sense. So I have my onions partially cooked. My potatoes partially cooked, and the corned beef that we just talked about is already cooked, and I just cut it up into even cubes. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn the heat back on these onions. I'm going to add a little bit more oil because I'm going to add the par cooked potatoes. And then I'm going to add the corned beef hash, the corned beef here to the hash. Now, everything's cooked. Why am I heating it up? Well, cold food is good if you're eating ice cream, but in most other situations, you typically want something nice and warm, right? I want to get a little bit of texture on this. There's so many different plates and parts of food. From it can taste good, but it also needs to look pretty, and you want it to have a nice mouthfeel and nice texture. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to get a nice sear on it, so it has a little bit of a crunch with the potatoes, the onions, and the corned beef. So once this gets hot, once this pot gets hot, we will zoom back out, and then I can start searing this. From there, we're going to go ahead and make eggs. I'm going to show you how to make 2 perfect over medium eggs. Okay, so my pan, if we're on the cutting board here, so my pan, you can see a little bit of the bubbles coming up from the oil. You can see the onions are translucent. Don't want color because I'm going to start adding color to it as we cook in the pan. And I want it all to come up evenly. So I'm going to go ahead and add the corned beef and then add some of the potatoes here. Beautiful. On the stove, I'm going to go ahead and mix this all together so I get a nice even spread of corned beef and onions and start to get that coloring on it. So I'm going to mix it, make sure that the onions are coming together and moving and spreading throughout. We don't want all the onions sitting on the bottom and burning. I can hear that sizzling. So when you're cooking, you're going to use all of your senses. Okay, I'm going to use my, I can smell when it's ready. I can hear when it's ready. So I wanted to start getting that nice crisp on the bottom. So I have that little bit of crunch to it. All right. While that's going, we'll move back over to the cutting board here. One very important thing I want to talk about is my egg pan. My egg pan is more important than most people in my life. Okay, I have one pan. It is only for eggs. It is non-stick. No metal is going to touch it. I'm not going to use soap in it. I really want to make sure that this is only for eggs. Okay. So as I'm using this, I have it heated up a little bit with a little bit of oil in here. Nice medium heat. You can see the oil moving around. Beautiful. Okay, so that's how I know it's the right temperature. The oil moves around freely, almost like water. It doesn't stick and coat to the pan. So from here, always make sure you use the towel so you don't burn your cutting board. I'm going to crack 2 eggs into it. Okay, spread the oil around. First egg.
Hi, Chef Dan.
Beautiful. Of course.
We had a question. What kind of oil are you using?
I'm just using canola oil in this. Typically, so when you think about the different type of oils, you want a neutral oil, which is going to be canola or vegetable. Olive oil is something you would use more in marinades or dressings because it has a slight fruitiness to it, a slight citrus to it in the background. So I'm not looking for flavor from the oil here. I just wanted to help cook the product. Great question. So we're looking at the eggs right here. So as we look on the cutting board, if you can see with eggs, anytime you crack an egg, there's that little white part that runs out. You can see over on this side. And then you have these 2 big clear bubbles that are going to turn white around the outside. An over medium egg means no runny whites, but runny yolk. So how do you get your whites to cook without your yolks cooking? The way to do that is you can, because we have, if you think about the mass of it, we have this big balloon of egg whites around the outside. So I want to pop it. So I'm going to take my finger and run that out so it becomes nice and even all the way around the outside. From here, I'm going to put it on low heat on the stove. And then I'm going to come back to my corned beef and see how it's doing. I don't know if you can hear it in the background, but I can hear it sizzling. I can hear that color starting to come in. That's why I moved it off of heat. Okay, and that's still working. So I'm going to keep it back on high heat here while the eggs are going. And so with the eggs, what I'm looking for here is I have the oil, I have the eggs in the pan. It's non-stick, so I'm not going to use any metal on it to scratch it. What I'm looking for is I want the egg whites to set. Okay, so I want the I don't want to be able to see the non-stick in the bottom of the pan, basically. So I'm going to wait for the eggs to get to that point before I flip them. So you can hear that color coming in on the corned beef hash. You can hear that sizzling starting to happen. Beautiful. And I'm looking at the eggs right now. Looks like they're almost ready to flip. Man, I wish you guys could smell this. With onion, it's starting to create a sweet aromatic smell. That corned beef, that saltiness permeating the air. All right, well, that's cooking. We're going to come back over to the cutting board. And I'm going to show you the eggs that I was talking about. So with the cutting board here, as we are looking at the eggs, you can see that you can't see the nonstick through the bottom of the pan, okay? So you can see that the whites are all set. And with the whites being set at this point, I'm going to do kind of a swirling motion to make sure that the eggs aren't sticking. Okay, and it looks like they're sticking a little bit, so I'm going to return it back to heat for 10 more seconds. All right, back to the cutting board here. So my eggs are ready to flip, and to flip the eggs without them breaking, we're going to do something called the choo-choo train. So it's basically where you're going to move your arm in a motion like the wheels of a train, like an old school train locomotive moving along. So what is a water balloon toss? When you're catching a water balloon, you don't just hold your hand out because it will stop and slam in your hands. So you want to go up and then come back down with it. So I'm going to move the eggs to the bottom of the pan. Oh, looks like it's sticking again. Move it back to the heat. Make sure that the oil is nice and smooth. Awesome. All right, so my eggs ready to go. Choo-choo train, up and down. Okay, just make sure that I catch it that way that yolks aren't slamming in and popping. So I can have runny yolks without runny whites. I'm going to put it back on heat here and let those whites cook. Make sure it's low heat. That pan is already hot. There's no reason for me to blast it with high heat. There should be no color on your eggs, right? I'm starting to get golden brown on the potatoes. The onion turn a little golden brown. I'm seeing some color on the corned beef hash, which means it's starting to come together. We're almost there. I'm going to show you that right here on the cutting board. So you can see I'm starting to get some coloring on that, the golden brown on the potatoes. You can see the onions. You can hear that oil sizzling. You can see the corned beef darkening. And that's what I want for that texture, that caramelization.
So Chef Dan, we do have another question. The question is why you're not using butter for the onions?
You can use butter if you would like. Butter and oil have two different, it's called the smoking point. So there are milk solids, the white stuff in butter, that tends to burn a little bit quicker. It burns at a lower smoking point. So oil, I can turn it up super hot, and that way I can get coloring without it smoking and burning the oil. You can use butter, but you will have to keep your temperature down just a little bit lower so you don't get that burnt, bitter, smoky taste in the background. Good question. All right, our eggs are almost ready. You can hear that corned beef hash popping in the background as it's starting to cook. So give it 10 more seconds and we can go ahead and we will plate it up. All right. So at this point, the last important part of the corned beef hash. So you can see that we have coloring all across this, the corned beef on the potatoes, the onions, which is right where I want it. What we're going to do is we're going to mix the last two ingredients in. Number one, I'm not adding salt to this. The corned beef is very salty. It's frying before it's cooked. So I'm not going to add any salt, but I am going to add a little bit of freshly ground black pepper. And then last thing I have is a fresh herb. It's going to be Italian flat leaf parsley. It has a very citrusy, again, slight earthy taste to it in the background. The reason I'm adding this last minute is if I were to cook it with everything else, it's going to end up wilting. Have you ever cooked spinach where you have 2 pounds of spinach and at the end you have 1 tablespoon? Same concept here. So now I'm adding some color to this. So we don't just have brown and a little bit of red. We have this beautiful bright green. And as it sits in this pan, that bright green is going to stand out. Beautiful. And it's going to create that earthiness to cut that salt, and that little bit of citrus is going to help bring out the sweetness in the onions. So you can see in the pot, we have this beautiful spread of color. We have nice coloring on the corned beef and the potatoes. So now I'm going to go ahead and plate it into the bowl. Beautiful. Okay. Double check the eggs, make sure that they're not sticking. Now with the eggs, before I put it back on the plate, I want to flip it around here to see which is my pretty side, okay? Beautiful. So this is the side I'm going to present. It's nice and even. It's not super oily. You can see that you have the runny yolks. That's not cooked too much. And you can see that that white is set. If I shake it, the yolks are what are going to move, but not the white, which is your perfect over medium egg. Because I went low and slow here, you can see that there's no coloring on it. We want that white with the eggs. All right. So now I'm going to, oh, lost it. I had an egg that didn't want to flip. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and put it just to the side here of the corned beef. Last most important step, I want to make sure it looks pretty. The star of the show is the corned beef, so I do want the eggs on there because it is part of the dish, but I want to see the majority of the corned beef. Beautiful. And I want to make sure that so these eggs are over to the side again, no brown on them. And then last thing I'm going to do is hit it with a little bit of green on top, so that stands out against that green, against that white and brown. And then a little bit of black pepper just over the top of the eggs, again, to contrast that white. So you can see that we have our finished product here. We have the eggs here, and then we have our mountain of corned beef hash sitting over here that is ready to be dug into. And there's nothing more satisfying than this breakfast than cutting into the eggs. You get a nice creamy yolk, which is going to help balance again with that salt and that citrus and that sweetness from the onions. And that's the finished product. Do you have any questions?
Anybody does have any questions for Chef Dan? First of all, Chef Dan, it looks wonderful. I'm ready to eat, Chef Dan. I already ate breakfast. I'm ready to eat again. Does anybody have any questions for Chef Dan?
There is a question that just came in. It's, can you make your own corned beef?
100%, yeah. So that typically comes from the brisket, which is the breast of the cow. So you can make that. It takes 5 to 7 days brining with your seasonings, and you're going to cook it low and slow so that you can typically shred it. But you can definitely make your own corned beef. I highly encourage that. Great question.
Oh, we do have another one. What kind of pre-cooked corned beef brand would you recommend?
Great question. I don't have a brand off the top of my head. I go to my local butcher. It's a quality butcher. That's where I get all of my Wagyu beef from. And so I ask them for the best recommendation. I trust them. So I don't know the brand. I would highly recommend not using canned corned beef. Canned corned beef is going to be really salty. It's going to be a little bit more fatty. They preserve it in a liquid. So it's not going to cook the same. You'll have to get all of the liquid out as opposed to a sliced or shredded corned beef. And it's going to have more of a spam, salty, chemically taste than it is going to have the beef taste with that slight salt in the background. So you can find it at your deli counters in most local grocery stores in bigger cities, and you can find it at your butcher. And if you have the opportunity to make it yourself, that's probably going to be the best option, and gives you something more to do.
Great. And here's another question. Would it matter if you use different seasonings?
Not at all. This is an opinion. Food is hard because everybody's right? If I were to serve this to a 5-year-old, I might say it's too salty. And you can serve it to grandma who says there's not enough salt on it, right? Your flavor palette is your flavor palette. When you're cooking, you're trying to hit the majority of people that would enjoy your food. If you're making this for yourself or your family and you prefer something different, you want it to be a little bit spicy, throw some red chili flakes in there, or put some hot sauce on top of it, right? It is 100% up to you. You could probably add a little bit more salt if you prefer more salt, maybe a little bit cumin or coriander, but this is going to be close to your traditional style of corned beef hash.
Great, thank you. I have 2 more questions. One is, what potatoes did you use, and do you put bacon bits in your eggs?
Great question. My apologies for not answering that earlier. So it is very important in this recipe. You'll see to use Yukon Gold potatoes. You don't want to use a russet Idaho potato in this. Number one, with this, with the Yukon Gold, you can eat the skin, so you don't have to peel it all. And number two, it has it's a little bit more waxy. So when you saute it, it's going to hold its form better. If you were to saute your russet Idaho potatoes, they have higher, I believe, higher water content and a lower sugar content. So they're going to break apart and start to turn into mashed potatoes. Yukon Gold potatoes have a higher sugar content, so they're able to hold in a high heat. And that's how I was able to get these cubes that you can see that you saw in the pan and the final dish. So using Yukon Gold is a very, it's a waxier potato and has a higher sugar content. So that's what you want to use for the saute here. And then bacon bits into your eggs, you can. I wouldn't recommend adding it to any type of like an over easy, over medium, or over hard egg. If you're doing scrambled eggs, of course, you can add anything to that. But with your over easy and over medium, you don't want to add any ingredients in. You're kind of just showing off the skill and the beauty of the egg in that moment. Great questions.
Right, anybody else have any other questions? Well, I tell you what, if nobody have any more questions, Chef Dan, we really appreciate you. We really enjoy it. I remember growing up, my father loved eggs and hash. And as a grown man, I love it as well. But this right here, this is something different, Chef Dan. This is on a different level. So everybody, please give Chef Dan a round of applause, a virtual round of applause. We really appreciate everything that he's done, everything he's doing. And Chef Dan, thank you for giving us your time today, and thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you all. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Send photos in, send pictures in if you're able to make this recipe. I would love to see how it turned out for you and hear feedback. But at this moment, thank you all, and good luck with the next part. Look forward to seeing you in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chef Dan.